Hi, welcome to the reading of the book Nausicaa's Way of Life by Jukichi Minoya. Whether you haven't read the manga but want to understand its contents, plan to read it and want some background beforehand, or have read it and want to organize its key points, this book is essential reading. There are 2 chapters in the book, and in this video we will start with Chapter 1, titled Central Axis of Nausicaa's Story. The following are the sections of this chapter. Chapter 2, titled The Path Nausicaa Walks, covers everything about Nausicaa and will be coming out in a future date. Thank you for taking the time to listen and subscribing. Chapter 1, The Central Axis of Nausicaa's Story. Number 1. Why are we drawn into the story? In the first chapter, I would like to explore the content of the manga version of Nausicaa by tracing its central axis. The manga version of Nausicaa contains a multitude of elements, and, naturally, the thematic aspects felt by the readers will vary. Some readers may perceive it as a war story, while others may be captivated by the ecosystem of the Sea of Corruption and its insects and forest. Alternatively, the story can be viewed from the perspective of human foolishness and ugliness, or resilience and kindness. The various types of aircraft and the numerous characters with strong personalities also add to its appeal. Despite the story's diverse elements, if I were asked to succinctly describe what kind of story is the manga version of Nausicaa, my answer would be the following. It is a story that makes us keenly feel the possible consequences of the continuous development of modern science and technology after about 1700 years. The Torumekian war version of the manga series Nausicaa, which spans 7 volumes, provides the following background information on the inside cover of each volume.
In a few short centuries, industrial civilization had spread from the western fringes of Eurasia to sprawl across the face of the planet, plundering the soil of its riches, fouling the air, and remolding life forms at will. This gargantuan industrial society had already peaked 1,000 years after its foundation. Ahead lay abrupt and violent decline. The cities burned, welling up as clouds of poison in the war remembered as the 7 Days of Fire. The complex and sophisticated technological superstructure was lost. Almost all the surface of the earth was transformed into a sterile wasteland. Industrial civilization was never rebuilt, as mankind lived on through the long twilight years. Assuming the starting point of this massive industrial civilization is the Industrial Revolution in the mid-18th century, it reaches its peak around 2750 AD, although not mentioned on the inside cover, the world in which Nausicaa and others live is set another 1,000 years after that, around 3750 AD. That is to say, the setting of the manga version of Nausicaa is roughly 1700 years from now. In this future world, if scientific and technological advancements continue unchecked, what problems will humanity face? What will the world look like? The manga version of Nausicaa is depicted as one possible answer to these questions. The story of human folly, ugliness, resilience, and kindness intertwined with this setting makes us strongly feel that humanity might indeed follow such a path. The realism of this point, the plausibility of such a scenario occurring, is a major factor that draws us into this story. And furthermore, assuming such a situation were to occur in the real world, it instills in us a strangely pessimistic view that humanity, humans, would probably be unable to stop it. Put simply, the story pierces right into the weak parts of human nature. Even if we understand intellectually that it is foolish, humans cannot completely prevent it due to various profits, pretenses, and emotions. It makes one wonder if humanity, which possesses such aspects, can take measures to avoid living through the long twilight years, when civilization reaches its peak and collapses. One cannot help but feel that we might end up walking the same path as in Nausicaa's world. Nausicaa, the girl, does not deny this human weakness, which may appear as a negative aspect. Instead, she actively embraces it. While this point will be clarified through this book, it should be noted here that Nausicaa's stance of not viewing things in an idealistic way further draws us into the story. Her actions and words cause both the characters in the story
and the readers to be startled. In a world much harsher than our current one, how can she accept even the negative aspects of humanity and still look toward the future? The fact that we, ourselves, probably couldn't act like that makes us find Nausicaa incredibly appealing and irresistibly engaging. Number 2. The Artificial Sea of Corruption. The setting described on the inside cover of each volume states, almost all the surface of the earth was transformed into a sterile wasteland, and this is most symbolically represented by the Sea of Corruption. The first volume provides the following explanation about the Sea of Corruption.
The Sea of Corruption was the New World, an ecological system born in the polluted wastelands created by civilizations long past. Only the great insects could live amongst the giant fungi and the miasma they exhaled, and so the earth was slowly submerging beneath that decaying sea.
It is not hard to imagine that the war called the 7 Days of Fire severely damaged natural environment. However, what we must recognize is that the term environmental destruction is viewed from the perspective of destruction of an environment suitable for humans. Just because the natural environment is destroyed and it becomes difficult for humans to live, it does not mean that all organisms will find it difficult to survive. In fact, there are organisms for which an environment that seems polluted to humans is more suitable for survival. From this viewpoint, the idea of environmental destruction has an anthropocentric aspect. The Sea of Corruption is expanding on the barren earth, where Nausicaa lives. This means it thrives in environments considered polluted by humans. The environments suitable for human survival and the Sea of Corruption are completely opposite. Now, let's delve into the core topic of the manga version of Nausicaa. It is revealed towards the end of the story that the Sea of Corruption is an artificially created ecosystem developed by the advanced technological capabilities of a civilization at its peak. Are you familiar with the term bioremediation? It refers to the technology of breaking down contaminated substances and purifying environmental pollution through the actions of microorganisms and other organisms. For example, this technology is used in sewage treatment plants for the purification of water by bacteria. The Sea of Corruption is an artificial apparatus created on a global scale using the technology of a gargantuan industrial society, having the capabilities of remolding life forms at will. All the organisms that make up the Sea of Corruption, including the Omu and the miasma, are artificial products. Although the Sea of Corruption disperses toxic gas called miasma, which appears to be detrimental to humans, it is revealed in the story that the miasma is a byproduct of the process of purifying the polluted earth. Despite emitting toxic gas, the Sea of Corruption was created as a result of the wisdom of previous generations to eventually cleanse the polluted earth and restore a livable environment for humans. Number 3. Genetically modified humanity. Using the technology of the gargantuan industrial society, having the capabilities of remolding life forms at will, the people of the previous civilization artificially created the Sea of Corruption to purify the environment polluted by the 7 Days of Fire war. But a byproduct of this purification process is the emission of toxic gas called miasma. This miasma is highly toxic to humans, and without wearing a miasma mask, there is a risk of death. Even in areas not engulfed by the Sea of Corruption, trace amounts of miasma in the air can lead to diseases like petrification of limbs over time, and people in Nausicaa's world are destined to live shorter lives than their natural lifespan. The story unfolds based on these premises, revealing that the Sea of Corruption is an artificial apparatus created by the people of the previous era, and that humans themselves have undergone genetic modification. The story goes like this. To restore the polluted earth, it was necessary to create a purification system, the Sea of Corruption, which performs bioremediation on a global scale. Yet, during the purification process, toxic gas is temporarily emitted, threatening human survival. Although it would have been ideal to create a purification system that did not emit toxic gas like miasma, there were likely technological limitations. The goal of purifying the environment is to reclaim a livable environment for humans. On the other hand, if humanity were to perish due to the miasma emitted by the very means intended to restore the environment, it would be self-defeating. Thus, the decision was made to genetically modify humans to withstand a certain level of trace miasma. Alongside the creation of the Sea of Corruption, genetic modification of humanity was undertaken. This raises the question of why the story does not remain merely within the realm of fantasy. In 2003, less than 10 years after the completion of the manga version of Nausicaa, the complete human genome was decoded, laying bare the sequence of human genes. Is it possible that in 700 years, the technology to modify human traits through genetic manipulation could be established? Each reader may have their own opinion, but this story strongly makes me feel that it is highly possible. Number 4. The ultimate goal of the previous civilization's humanity. Let's return to the topic of the Sea of Corruption. The Sea of Corruption is tasked with purifying the polluted natural environment. During the purification process, it emits gas, but ultimately only detoxified crystals, sand, remain. It is said that the purification takes 1,000 years, and Nausicaa, after falling into a layer where the purification had advanced, was able to breathe without her gas mask. Nonetheless, a terrifying fact is revealed in the story. In a world where complete purification is achieved, humans from Nausicaa's era cannot survive. Due to genetic modifications that made them somewhat resistant to the gas, they are, conversely, unable to adapt to an environment without any gas. Thus, it follows that humans who have undergone genetic modification cannot survive in a fully purified world. So, the humans of the previous civilization devised a plan. When purification is complete, they would perform another round of genetic modification on humanity, making them adaptable to any environment with no gas at all, and ensuring they become a peaceful species that will never engage in war or environmental destruction again. To make this possible, the humans of the previous civilization created the Crypt of Shuwa. It is an artificial construct that also seems to be a sentient being. At the center of this strange crypt is a pulsating mass of flesh, inscribed with ancient characters, referred to as the Master of the Crypt. New characters appear on this mass during the summer and winter solstices. A brain trust called the Council of Monks, which lives within the crypt as permitted by the Master, spends long years deciphering these cryptic characters. The Master of the Crypt is programmed to input the technology of the Gargantuan Industrial Society, having the capabilities of remolding life forms at will, and gradually output this technology in ancient characters. The Council of Monks deciphers these characters so that, when the purification is complete, the technology to genetically modify humans to adapt to the purified environment and become peaceful is imparted. Let's review the part where the Master of the Crypt reveals its purpose to Nausicaa and her companions.
We speak to you as representatives of the great many who died meaningless deaths because of their own folly. You are living the long period of purification, but the day shall come when the Sea of Corruption ceases to be, and a green pure land is risen. The great suffering of the purification is our atonement. That glorious morning of the day of reconstruction shall surely come. Children, we gathered all human wisdom and built this crypt in the act of despair and bewilderment that we might lend a hand in the rebuilding of the world when the morning comes. Read the words that appear on our body and pass on that technology you find there. When the text at long last appears in its entirety, then that day shall come. The day the suffering ends.
Volume 7, page 195 and 196.
This is the grave marker of the old world, but it is also the hope for a new world. We even have the technology to restore the bodies of you who have adapted to the polluted world, so that all may live in the newly purified world. The transition should be a smooth one. When the long period of purification is over, the human race shall become a peaceful part of the new world, when our knowledge and technology have served their purpose. It shall surely be music and poetry that humanity treasures, above all else.
Number 5. The Collaborators of the Master of the Crypt. The Master of the Crypt, created by the collective wisdom of the humans of the previous civilization, had a plan for replacing organisms, including humans, once the purification was complete. It's crucial to note, however, that the Master of the Crypt cannot realize this plan alone. The Council of Monks, tasked with deciphering the ancient characters that appear on the Master of the Crypt, actively seeks external collaborators to govern the secular world. Simply put, they needed the protection and cooperation of the current rulers to ensure the smooth progress of decoding the technology to transform life forms once purification was complete, and to assist in executing the organism replacement plan. In Nausicaa's era, the one positioned as this collaborator was the Holy Emperor of Dorok. Let's take a moment to review the relationships between the states in Nausicaa's world. Nausicaa is the daughter of Gil, the chief of the small kingdom of the Valley of the Wind, which is also the title of the work. Gil had 11 children, but only Nausicaa survived. Nausicaa is destined to become the chief of the Valley of the Wind, despite being a woman. The small, remote kingdom of the Valley of the Wind, according to an ancient treaty, is guaranteed autonomy in exchange for joining the ranks of the great nation of Torumechia during wartime. The reason it is not made a vassal state is because it possesses a rare fighter aircraft called a gunship, which is valuable in Torumechia's military campaigns. Engaged in conflict with Torumechia is the Dorok Principalities, whose Holy Emperor is the collaborator with the Master of the Crypt. Does the Holy Emperor of Dorok know about the plan to replace organisms after purification? Naturally, he does. The successive Holy Emperors have established the holy capital of Shuwa, where the crypt is located, and have protected it. In return, they have acquired part of the technology of the gargantuan industrial society, having the capabilities of remolding life forms at will. The first beneficiary of this technology is the Holy Emperor himself. In Nausicaa's time, there are 2 Holy Emperors, Emperor Namolith and his younger brother Miralupa. Miralupa, who possesses supernatural powers said to be inherited by successive Holy Emperors, has succeeded to the throne, and both are well over 100 years old. This longevity is made possible by the advanced technology of the previous civilization. Emperor Namolith, who lacks supernatural powers and holds no real power, has undergone numerous surgeries called Hydra transplants to achieve an immortal body, appearing youthful. In contrast, Emperor Miralupa witnessed his father, the previous Holy Emperor, die with blood spurting from his skin after Hydra transplants and refused such surgeries, maintaining his body through special medicinal baths called revitalization baths. Although both use the technology of the previous civilization, Miralupa's lack of transplants limits his body's durability, risking deterioration and collapse when exposed to air for extended periods. And so, his subjects constantly monitor his physical condition. Secondly, the Dorok utilize this technology as biological weapons in their war against Torumechia. Specifically, they artificially cultivate Omu, creatures impossible for humans to capture alive, and half-kill them, using the enraged swarms of Omu to destroy Torumechian encampments. Without the technology to artificially cultivate Omu, such a strategy would be impossible. The Dorok leverage their technological superiority to gain an advantage in the war. Number 6. The consequence of manipulating life. Dorok possesses a division called the Doctors, who research technologies supporting the abnormal longevity of the Holy Emperor and the cultivation of artificial life forms. It is likely that the Council of Monks within the Crypt provides a portion of the technological information revealed by the Master of the Crypt in exchange for the overall protection of the Crypt. Despite trying to leverage this technological power to gain an advantage in the war against Torumechia, it seems they faced the consequences of manipulating life. When they attempted to airstrike Torumechia with cultivated spores and slime molds, the cultivated slime mold mutates during transport, causing the aircraft to crash into Dorok territory and cover the land with the sea of corruption. Emperor Miralupa, aboard the ship, managed to transfer to a lifeboat and return to the holy city of Shuwa. But due to severe physical deterioration, he required long-term bathing treatment. During this vulnerable time, his brother Namalith killed him. Namalith, realizing the biological weapon strategy had led Dorak to ruin, abandoned the effort to restore the nation and instead plotted to create a dual empire with Toromekia's princess Kushana. During these machinations, however, Namalith is exposed to the beam of a giant god warrior decided to deploy, ultimately reducing him to just a head. Even without a body, he did not die due to his hydra-like constitution. Despite experiencing human-like pain, he begged Kushana to crush his head and end his suffering, but she refused. Eventually, he fell off a ship due to the vibrations from the giant god warrior taking flight, disappearing into the Sea of Corruption. Incidentally, this giant god warrior was initially discovered in a ruined state in the small, remote nation of Pejag. It was found that implanting a key-like object called the Stone of Life into its heart would cause it to awaken and grow. The people of Pejag, sensing the danger, removed the Stone of Life to halt its growth. Even so, both Toromekia and Dorak got wind of its existence and desperately tried to acquire it. Eventually, Dorak obtained the giant god warrior, and although they did not secure the Stone of Life, the doctors managed to grow it to a certain level with their technology. In the end, this giant god warrior, despite its technological marvel, left Emperor Namalith's undying body battered, sending him flying into the Sea of Corruption, and finally leading to his death. By utilizing the advanced technology of the past civilization for warfare, Dorak's land was submerged by the very cultivated slime molds they created, and their emperor was destroyed by the giant god warrior they seized and nurtured. As a consequence of manipulating life, Dorak was utterly decimated as a nation. Number 7. What is the giant god warrior? Given that the giant god warrior has been mentioned, let's explore what exactly it is. On the lower part of the back cover of each volume, there is an illustration depicting several giant god warriors marching across a devastated land filled with flames and smoke. From this, it is easy to imagine that the giant god warriors played a significant role in the 7 Days of Fire War, scorching the earth and devastating lands around the world. The giant god warrior that appears in the story was being grown by Dorak's scientists, but was still in an infantile state. When Nausicaa broke through the membrane of the artificial womb holding it and carried the Stone of Life, the giant god warrior recognized Nausicaa as its mother. It used its beam to incinerate the Hydra mercenaries trying to capture Nausicaa, and even burned off Emperor Namalith's left arm. Despite being a baby, it possessed terrifying power. Who created the giant god warrior? It was, indeed, the humans of the previous civilization. There are hints of their motives in the statements made by the giant god warrior.
My name is Oma. Oma, son of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Gird in rings of light. Oma is both arbitrator and warrior. I am Oma, arbitrator and warrior and judge.
Oma is the name Nausicaa gave to the giant god warrior. Upon receiving this name, it made the first statement, rapidly developing intelligence that surprised even Nausicaa, its mother. In the second quoted part, the giant god warrior becomes aware of its role as an arbiter. This suggests that it was programmed by the humans of the previous civilization to function as such. Nausicaa realizes that the giant god warriors were not created as mere death-bringers, but possibly as arbiters to stop wars. What is the difference between a death-bringer and an arbiter? A death-bringer is essentially a weapon. For example, if a powerful country had created the giant god warriors, they would fight solely for said country's interests, destroying only their enemies. They would serve only that nation specifically. An arbiter, on the other hand, is not swayed by the interests of any particular nation. Instead, it is meant to mediate between conflicting national interests during war. Therefore, an arbiter is not fundamentally a weapon. While not a weapon, when nations are at war and mediation is necessary, the most effective mediator would possess immense power. Without the ability to enforce its decisions, the mediator would be ineffective. Conversely, if the mediator has overwhelming force, combat capability, the warring nations would have to comply with its arbitration. To provide this power, the giant god warriors were equipped with formidable combat capabilities reminiscent of powerful weapons. In our modern world, there is no true system for arbitrating conflicts and wars between nations. Even the United Nations upholds the principle of state sovereignty. The principle of state sovereignty means that a nation's sovereignty should not be infringed upon by other forces. If an arbiter like the giant god warrior existed, its overwhelming force could override the sovereignty of warring nations. Modern international society is carefully managed to ensure that state sovereignty is not infringed upon or limited by non-state actors. The International Court of Justice handles disputes between states, but it cannot conduct trials without the consent of all parties involved. If one party objects to the trial as a violation of sovereignty, the court cannot proceed. Modern international society operates to ensure that state sovereignty is not forcibly infringed upon by higher powers. Considering all this, the giant god warriors were likely created out of necessity when global warfare reached a stage where it could no longer be stopped by any means, or anticipated to reach that stage. In today's world, if someone attempted to create something like the giant god warrior, powerful nations would likely oppose it. A powerful force, like an arbiter, that can step into global conflicts might make decisions that go against other power nations and punish them if they don't follow those decisions. Such nations would argue that the existence of this kind of arbiter infringes on their national sovereignty and would resist its creation. In Nausicaa's world, the humans of the previous civilization were likely so desperate to stop the endless wars that even powerful nations could not oppose the introduction of the giant god warriors. They were created as a last resort to prevent the total devastation of humanity. By Nausicaa's time, the giant god warrior, Oma, recognizes Nausicaa as its mother and follows her commands, prioritizing her interests, perhaps due to being prematurely grown without the Stone of Life. Oma did not fully manifest its intended function as an arbiter. Number 8. The end of the Crypt. The fact that Oma, the giant god warrior, did not fully exhibit its intended function as an arbiter and instead prioritized the words of Nausicaa, its mother, led to a significant development in the story. This development is crucial because Nausicaa's final decision in the climax of the story was to seal the crypt. The crypt was constructed by the humans of the previous civilization to perform genetic modifications and execute a plan to replace organisms, including humans, to adapt to the purified environment once the polluted natural environment was cleansed. Put simply, the crypt existed for the benefit of humanity. Similarly, the giant god warrior represents the interests of humanity, sharing the same essence as the crypt. It was created to mediate, arbitrate, wars between nations from the perspective of the overall benefit of humanity, transcending national principles. Both the crypt and the giant god warrior were created by humans for the benefit of humanity, which is their commonality. Given this logic, the giant god warrior should not destroy the crypt to seal it. The crypt was created by humans for the benefit of humanity. Therefore, there is no reason for the giant god warrior, which also represents the interests of humanity, to destroy the crypt. It might even protect it to prevent its destruction. Yet, Oma, who recognized Nausicaa as its mother, chose to follow her words above its original purpose. Instead of fulfilling its role as an impartial representative of humanity's interests, it obeyed a single individual. In the climax of the story, Oma, though exhausted, summoned its remaining strength at Nausicaa's command to unleash a final beam and attack the crypt from within. It, in the end, crushed the master of the crypt with its hand, bringing the entire structure down. Thus, the giant god warrior, created for the sake of humanity, destroyed the crypt, which was also conceived for humanity's future. Had Oma fully manifested its function as an arbiter, this climax would not have occurred. Number 9. The most important structure of the story. The most important structure of the story of Nausicaa is the confrontation between the humans of the previous civilization and Nausicaa. The humans of the previous civilization, using advanced technology at its peak, sought to manipulate life forms and purify the polluted earth to restore a world where humanity could live comfortably again. They also aimed to transform humanity into a peaceful species to prevent future wars and environmental destruction. This conclusion was reached based on their bitter experiences. Nausicaa understands the background that led the humans of the previous civilization to such a conclusion. Nevertheless, there are aspects she cannot compromise on. What is the part Nausicaa cannot compromise on? The confrontation between Nausicaa and the master of the Crypt provides insight into this, so here is a lengthy excerpt.
Children, give us your help, that this light should not go out.
Nay, you are nothing but shadows. Why do you not speak the truth? The truth about your plan to completely replace the polluted land and all living things? Are those shadows we saw the men and women who created the sea of corruption in order to slowly destroy the old world? Do you intend to go on deceiving us until the very day you plan to destroy us? Why? Because no matter how much knowledge and technology you have, you will still need slaves to do the work for you on the morning you replace the world? Our bodies may have been artificially transformed, but our lives will always be our own. Life survives by the power of life. If such a morning is to come, then we shall live to face that morning. We are birds who, though we may spit up blood, will go on flying beyond that morning, on and on. To live is to change. The omu, the mold, the grasses and trees, we human beings, we will all go on changing, and the sea of corruption will live on with us. But you cannot change. You have only the plan that was built into you, because you deny death. Speak the truth. We have no need for you.
You want me to speak the truth? Which truth? Have you ever tried to imagine the degree of hate and despair that filled the world in those days? It was a world in which tens of billions of human beings would do anything to survive. Poisoned air, punishing sunlight, parched earth, new illnesses coming into being every day. Death was everywhere, all kinds of religions, all versions of justice, every party with a different interest. We created a god to arbitrate. Our choices were limited. We had no time. We decided to entrust everything to the future. This is the grave marker of the old world, but it is also the hope for a new world. We even have the technology to restore the bodies of you who have been adapted to the polluted world, so that all may live in the newly purified world. The transition should be a smooth one. When the long period of purification is over, the human race shall become a peaceful part of the new world. When our knowledge and technology have served their purpose, it shall surely be music and poetry that humanity treasures above all else.
In short, you are a god. One of the many gods created a millennium ago. And over that millennium you have become covered with sarcomata and filth. I do not doubt that you were created out of idealism and a sense of purpose in an age of despair. Why didn't those men and women realize that both purity and corruption are the very stuff of life? Suffering and tragedy and folly will not disappear in a purified world. They are a part of humanity. This is why, even in a world of suffering, there can also be joy and shining light. Pitiable Hydra, even they are living things. Because you were created as an artificial god of purity, you have become the ugliest creature of all, never knowing what it means to be alive.
You carry the scent of an indecent darkness. The possibility of various unexpected problems was accounted for when the plan was made. I am the sole light that remains in the darkness. Girl, are you saying that efforts to rebuild the world should be abandoned, and humanity left to become extinct?
Your question is laughable. We have lived all these centuries with the sea of corruption. Extinction has long since become a part of our lives.
I am speaking not of individuals, but of humanity as a species. Fewer and fewer children will be born. You cannot escape the hardening disease. You have no future without me. Humanity shall surely become extinct. You cannot live beyond that morning.
That is for the planet to decide.
That is nihilism, nothingness.
The sympathy and love of the Omu were born from the depths of nothingness.
You are a dangerous darkness. Life is light.
You are wrong. Life is the light that shines in the darkness. Following this exchange, through various attacks and defenses, Nausicaa thereafter guides Oma to destroy the Crypt. Nausicaa acknowledges that the humans of the previous civilization were not driven by selfishness or malice when they created the Crypt. Still, for Nausicaa, purity and pollution are both parts of life. Removing the pollution to create something purely clean means it is no longer human. It is the mixture of pollution and purity within humans that allows them to find hope, even amidst suffering. The question is, would one truly be happy being a purely clean being? Nausicaa does not fear extinction. Perishing is already part of our lives. Why should she now fear extinction? Nausicaa's final resolution is that rather than being replaced by beings that are purely clean and potentially not truly happy, she prefers to leave their fate to the planet itself, whether they perish or continue to live amid adversity. This is Nausicaa's will and her ultimate answer. Nausicaa's confrontation with the master of the Crypt, the humans of the previous civilization, was a great gamble. She likely considered her chances of success to be 50-50 or less. After the verbal confrontation quoted earlier, the master of the Crypt attempts to destroy Nausicaa's consciousness with a strange beam. As Nausicaa's situation becomes dire, various forces come together to help her. External physical attacks on the Crypt, Selm's telekinetic barrier, etc. In a moment of hesitation by the master of the Crypt, Nausicaa calls Oma. Finally, Oma crushes the master of the Crypt, leading to the collapse of the entire Crypt. Nausicaa took on a great gamble and managed to grasp victory. Even with Nausicaa's victory, however, the path ahead for humanity is fraught with thorns. The war between Dorak and Toromechia has expanded the sea of corruption, resulting in numerous casualties, making the world even harder for humans to live in. Amidst this, Nausicaa says, "Everyone, let us depart, no matter how difficult it is," marking the end of the story.